This is Berenice Jackson interviewing
Victor Klein.
Victor Klein, Shattuck, Oklahoma. Okay, Mr. Klein, where were you born and when were you born?
I was born in November the 26th of 1911, about 12 miles southwest of Shattuck.
So you've lived here
I
about all
lived
your
here
life?
73 years.
Oh. Okay, and you were raised on a farm then?
I was raised on a farm. I lived on that place 1 year. Then my dad bought a place 7 miles southeast of town, and we moved over there in November in 1912. And I lived on that place. After my dad retired and moved to town, I stayed on that place till 1977.
Well.
I lived on that one farm 65 years.
Well, that's quite a record.
I thought I held the record for a while, but I find out there's people that lived on a farm longer than I have, and one farm.
Well, when you were small, what was your chores around when you got up old enough to help your dad, like all little boys do? What was your main chore?
My main chore was to do the field work. I loved farm equipment, big equipment. And that, I don't remember how old I was when I seen my first airplane. I was pretty young yet, just a kid. And I told my dad I'm going to fly one of them on these days. Well, he thought there was something the matter with him. I said, Dad, that was long about in 1921 or 22.
Yes.
But I never had the finance to go learn to fly at that time, when I was a young man. But I did later on. When I got on my own, got my own money, done my own farming, I did take out flying airplanes.
Oh, you did?
Yes, and I just done it more or less for a hobby. And at them days, it didn't cost much to do it. I was mechanical minded. I could get around these airplanes, and I could make them fly.
Well. And
make the motors run good, and that's the way I got my. I worked for what I used the airplane for. I worked for that. See.
What kind of plane did you fly? What was it?
Well, I started with a J3 Cub, and I didn't fly anything big. The twin Bonanza is the biggest airplane I ever flew with 2 motors on it.
Well, and you enjoyed it?
Oh, I enjoyed it very much.
Do you still fly?
I still fly some.
Oh, you do?
Yes.
Well.
I have a friend that has a single-engine airplane, and I can use his airplane, and I still fly.
Well, that's great. Well, when you started working, what'd you do? Run the tractor for your dad?
Yes. My dad never did run tractors.
Oh, he didn't?
Never did.
He was a horse farmer, was he?
He started with horses, and that's all. He liked horses and didn't want nothing to do with the tractors.
Did you raise horses?
No, we never did. We never did raise any horses.
What was your crops? What did you raise?
Wheat and milo.
And did you ever raise any of that big crookneck?
Crookneck maize. Well, yeah. That's what we started with.
And how did you harvest that?
Got a hold with the left hand and cut it off with the right hand and throw it in the wagon every day.
That was work, wasn't it?
Oh, that was work.
But it seems to me like those heads are bigger and more full of grain than the heads are today.
That is right.
But today they plant it closer, don't they?
They plant, yes, it's a lot closer.
And they harvest it with the machine.
And harvest it with a combine. But it has to have it takes a lot of water to raise that. It's thick as they plant it now, close together. If we'd have planted maize like that back when I was a kid, we wouldn't have raised nothing because we couldn't irrigate.
Yes.
Irrigating.
Are you irrigating on the farm?
No, I never did get around to that. After I got to where I took over the farm, I turned out to be more of a cowman than I was a farmer. So I went into the cattle business more than I was farming later in life. I'd say the last 25 years I was on the farm, I was more of a cowman.
What breed of cattle did you raise?
I had the Black Angus.
Well, purebreds?
Purebred black Angus cows, and I used Hereford bulls.
Mm-hmm.
I had crossbred calves then.
Is that what they call the black bollies?
Black bollies.
I've heard that expression,
Yeah.
but I didn't know what it meant.
That's a black bolly.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's what I raised until 1977 when I sold out.
Well, those calves sold good on the market, didn't
And what they sold for?
they? No, I say they sold good.
Oh, yes.
Brought a good.
There was a good market for baldy calves.
Mm-hmm. Did you ever?
They're making cows out of them now, and they got baldy cows.
Oh, they have.
Oh, yeah, they like that.
They like that cross
Like
for
that cross.
mothers. Did you ever show your cows at fairs or?
No, I never did.
Did you keep breeding stock to sell?
Yes, I had my own breeding stock.
Well, I mean to sell to other people.
Yes, I'd sell heifers. And a lot of times, just if somebody come along one barn, I'd just sell them just a little bit above mine. I never did try to make any extra money out of that. Because I didn't keep no paper up. See, I didn't keep register my cattle. I had registered cows at one time. I had 100 registered cows, but I never did keep up my paperwork on it. I just didn't think it was necessary. I didn't have the time to do it. That's the way to say it.
But those were good cattle to keep.
Oh yes, I had
even
to.
for just breeding purposes to raise. Mm-hmm. Well, I can see where that would be a good idea. What was your father's name?
Reinhard.
How do you spell that?
Reinhard.
Hard. And his first name?
That was his first name.
Oh, that was his first name.
Klein. Klein. Reinhard Klein. That's my father.
Klein. Did he come? Where did he come from?
He come from Russia.
He came from Russia. Was he born in Russia?
He was born in Russia. He lived in Russia till he was 16 years old.
Now, can you tell me anything about his life in Russia that you can remember?
Well, what he told me, I'd hear them talk about it. From the time that he could remember, they lived in little colonies. And the colony that he lived in the name was Dreispitz.
Say that again.
Dreispitz.
Okay.
And they lived in colony. There was probably 200 or 300 families maybe in that group. And the Russian government would give them, if they had a child, and it was a boy, they'd get a few acres of land that they could farm. I don't remember the acres, seemed like it was 5 acres. For each boy, the girl none. So that's where they made their living. That's all they had was to cultivate these few acres that they had 2 or 3 boys. Well, they had 10, 15 acres of land, and they would cultivate that and raise food to eat. None for the market because there weren't enough acres there. It was just to eat and feed for their livestock. They had a cow or 2 and a couple of horses, and that's all they had.
Well, what implements would they use to?
They have little horse-drawn implements, maybe one bottom moldboard or something like that, and that's all they had. Very poor, very poor. My dad's family finally got tired of that. They were promised way back in history, way back when I can't remember, some Russian leader, the Tsar or something, married a German girl. They were promised that they would let these Germans go into Russia and let them develop some of that land. Russia's a rich country if it's developed right. Well, it never turned out that way. People finally got tired. They were over a couple, 200, 300 years.
Several generations.
Several generations, and nothing better than it was when they were there back in the 1700s.
Well.
Maybe earlier than that, maybe. Well, anyway, they decided they would come to America. They had some relatives over here that'd been over here. My granddad, Klein, had some relatives in Kansas, Lucas, Kansas. They'd been there for a number of years, and as a matter of fact, there was some in the family that had been here long enough and went to school enough. There was even a lawyer in the family, you know. Well, they decided to come to America. Well, they took a long time. They got on a little boat on the Volga River and went someplace over on the border by Germany and got over there and had to wait a week for transport or something there, and finally got got on a big boat and come to America. And they had bought a ticket to Galveston, Texas. They ended up in Maryland someplace. Baltimore, I believe it was. Well, anyway, they transferred them and they took them on another boat and brought them down to Galveston. And they got right close to, and we're in the Gulf, in American waters. Had an uncle born out at sea.
Well,
We call him the man without a country. Well, anyway, she couldn't travel. My grandmother couldn't travel then. See, after they got docked and unloaded the boat, she couldn't travel. So she stayed in a hotel there for a few days. The rest of the family went on, come to Kansas. In Lucas, Kansas. Well, by the time they got up here, it was in the late summer, if I remember right. They had a lot of big rains, and the railroad tracks were washed out, and they transferring the trains all around other. And they finally were sidetracked and left sitting in this train, and the engine left, and everybody left, and they sat there. Well, 2 days, I think they waited, and they finally got a little food some way. And in the meantime, my grandfather's brother that lived at Lucas, he got concerned about this, and he got called the railroad company. Well, they're so-and-so. Well, he said, there's some people on there that they're coming from Russia, and they can't even talk the language or anything here. We need to find them. So they got on the ball right away, and they found them, and took them to Lucas. And in the meantime, grandmother, they let her go, get put on the train with a note on her that she couldn't talk, and the people were supposed to see that she had something to eat and take care of this baby, you know. She got up in around that part of the country, around Lucas or Wilson, Kansas, and run into the same thing. All the bridges were out, the railroad bridges were out. They sidetracked one car, and she was in that car by herself. And
I bet she was scared.
Oh, I'll bet so too. But anyway, another day or two, while the railroad company found out about this, so they went and got her, and finally got all back together again. This all happened in 1903. And got all back together, and then they, in 1906, I think it was, my dad come down here and worked in the broomcorn country. This was broomcorn. You probably remember that quite well.
Yes.
Well, he thought he kind of liked this. He didn't like the broomcorn, but anyway, there was quite a lot of work to be had around here, so he worked one winter down here and went back and worked Horsfield in Kansas, and I think in 1908 or in 1909 he got married. He married a girl from Kansas. She was American born. And in 1910 they come down here. In 1911 I was born. My mother died in 1918 then, during the flu epidemic during World War I.
Yes, I remember that.
And my dad remarried later on. My stepmother's still alive. She's 87, I think.
Yeah.
So
This grandmother that was left in the hotel room with the baby is still living?
no, my stepmother's still.
Oh, your stepmother.
No, my grandmother died. That was left in the hotel room. She died in 1942.
I see.
She was 86 when she died. They had a hard lives, very hard lives. But they come into the United States, and them old people, you know, they had made up their mind they were going to make it, and they worked hard. And this, especially, I find this, that the German people, well, there's lots of hard work. You'll find German people. They work hard, you know.
Yes.
They think that's the only way to make money is to work hard. So they, of course, there's none of them wealthy, but they've all made a good living. So that's just about all I can tell you from my dad's side of the family. Of course, my mother's side, coming from Kansas, we lived down here. When my mother died, I lost contact with her family altogether.
Oh, what was her maiden name?
Her name was Annie Herbel, Herbel.
Anna?
Bel.
Bel. Okay. And she was born, she came from Iowa.
No, she came from Lucas, Kansas.
Oh, yes.
She was born there.
I have interviewed so many people that came from Iowa. I just
Yeah.
presumed that you did too. Okay. And you don't know too much about your mother's people?
No. I knew one uncle pretty well and one aunt later on in life. Before I'd say along about in the 55 to 65, I kind of knew them, but none of the rest of my cousins from my mother's side I don't know, but one. The only one I ever knew, and he's dead now too.
Well, then your father liked this country down here, and how did he get a hold of this farm out here?
Well,
How did he manage that?
the way I can remember, my granddad gave him $500 to make a down payment on it, and they moved in there, and there was just a dugout for a house.
Yes.
They lived in that for a year, and then built a little two-room house with an upstairs on it the following year. And just like I say, worked hard at it and saved the money, didn't go to town spend the money.
Yes.
And got that paid for, and bought some more land right next to it. A few years, he bought a little more, and finally bought him a house in town.
And he'd live in town and go out to farm?
No, after he moved to town, I took over
You
the
took
farm.
over.
Yeah.
Where did you go to school at?
I went to Shattuck schools here
Here in Shattuck.
Mm-hmm.
Well, did your father talk German, or did he learn to speak English?
Oh, yeah, he spoke English quite fluently. He couldn't talk it at all. As a matter of fact, he couldn't talk American at all when he come over here. And when I started school, when I was 7 years old when I started school, I couldn't even talk English.
Well,
Now I can't talk German anymore.
well, it's too bad you lost that language.
Well, I haven't completely lost. I think if I could get around some people that talk German all the time, I could pick it up real fast again. However, we didn't talk the true German. It was kind of already kind of lost its.
When you so many years in Russia, did you lose
They lost that thing, yeah.
the
And then of course I talked like my parents did, so
Sure.
I never did really learn to really talk with the true German.
Well, I wonder why that Tsar didn't keep its word with these people.
Well, that's a good question. I don't know. But history tells us that they didn't, and they could have. They were afraid. I read someplace that they were afraid if they'd let these German people go and develop that they would probably take over the country someday.
Oh.
And you know, back in history, we know that we had the Germans had one leader that wanted to do that. He wanted to take over the whole world, and that was Hitler.
Well, didn't the Kaiser?
The Kaiser was about the same, yeah,
about the same way?
Yeah. Well, for World War I was the Kaiser, and the Second World War was Hitler.
Yes.
And they want to control the world. See?
Mm-hmm.
And they just don't work that way. People.
No. And you went to school then here in Shattuck?
Well, I went to elementary school out in the country.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
What was the name of the school you
Star Valley, sitting up on a big rock hill.
Where?
Star Valley.
Uh-huh. You remember who your first teacher was?
My first teacher's name was John Daly. John Daly, and I started school in the fall of 1916, I believe it was, in the fall. Had 3 weeks of school. During World War I, and then he was called up in the draft, and we had no school that winter anymore. That was all. There was no teachers, nobody available. So John Daly, he went to the army, he went to the service, and he come back, and he taught at other places. He didn't get out of school, and he taught other places, but I remembered him, run into him, talked to him a number of times after that, and he was up in Kansas.
Is he still living?
No, he died here about 10, 12 years ago.
Well, could you speak English then when you started to school?
The first day, nothing. Not one word. I don't know why we weren't taught English when we were supposed to go to English school. Well, it didn't take us kids long that we could talk it. It didn't take long. And then, of course, they said at school, and there was no German talking. Well, we couldn't talk.
Well, you couldn't talk, could you?
But it didn't take long, and now a lot of them same kids that I went to school, started school with, No, my brother, you know, is a year younger than I don't think that he can even talk it anymore. He's been away from here so long, and he married an American girl, and they never did, he never did talk German.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And my son can't talk German. My grandson can't talk German. We never did teach him that. I don't know why.
Well, you know, I've wondered about that. Why didn't the parents teach them German so that they would know?
I really can't give you an answer on that. I really don't know. Now, my own personal feeling was, well, why should I talk German? Because that's not the language that I use when I do business, and to talk German at home, I couldn't see no point in that.
Mm-hmm.
I remember when I was still a young man, and we were out in a group, a few young people, and a girl asked me, well, if you ever have any children, go and teach them German? I said, no. I can remember that.
Well,
I said, no, I'm not going to teach them German.
Uh-huh.
And we didn't.
Mm-hmm.
And I really have no regrets for that. But sometimes now, I think this: if I could have spoke the real German, the true German, it'd have probably been different. But we have been so far away from it. Just like I can remember when I was a young man going to church. Well, they'd get a preacher in here, you know, that really talked German, you know, and he'd get up and preach German. I couldn't understand one word.
Well.
Now, if I'd had to learn to read and write, it would have been a different thing. I could have understood, but I never did. See, now, like the Biblist wrote, that is the true German. And the way the Germans around here talk is just not even close to that. It's kind of a slang or something, I don't know.
Can you read German?
Oh, no, I never did learn to read German. Now, my wife can read a little German. She went to school. She took it in school, studied German. And she could read, write, and but we don't use it much now. Occasionally now, I found around my dad's family Bible not long ago, and we opened it up, and he made some notes in the back of the Bible in German. Well, she finally got it made out what it was. She could read it yet, but I could never make it out. I don't even know my own name in German. If I see it written in German, I wouldn't know it.
I had a cousin. His grandfather was German. His name was Barth.
Oh, Barth, yeah.
Barth. And when, well, maybe you know him, Vic Barth.
Yes, I know him well.
And when he was in World War II, he was in Germany. And he was with a lot of German people, you know. And he got to where he could understand a few words, and he run across a lot of Barths in Germany.
Right? In Germany.
But he didn't know enough of the family history to see whether they still might be related or not.
Yeah. Well,
and I thought that was a shame.
Yeah.
But
probably are.
The Barth, I guess, is a German name.
That's a German name, yeah. Barth is German.
Well, then you did the plowing and drove the tractor and so on. When did you get married? What year?
I got married in 1938.
And who was your wife?
My wife is a girl from Nebraska.
Oh?
Yeah, Barrett, Nebraska she came from, and her name was Klein.
Was what?
Klein. K-L-E-I-M.
Well, almost like that.
Almost, yeah.
K-L-E-I-M. What was her first name?
Maria.
Marie. Is that a German name too?
The Klein? Yes.
And she came from Nebraska.
Yeah, she was, however, she was born in Russia. My wife was born in Russia. She was 1 year old when she came to the United States in 1913. 1912. She was born in 1910.
Was she in the same...
in the same area, but a different little colony which they call Stefan. That's a German word too. And it was probably just a few miles away, according to the map. It is. They organized a group here, this Russian-German group, you know, that they have here now, and they get a lot of this information together, and I've got maps that I have picked up down there. I'm not really too interested in what they're doing down there, But I love maps, and I study maps, and I got over some maps, and I can find these little towns
Oh.
in Russia where these people were raised, a lot of them.
Now, did they have their own stores or how
Well,
would
now let me think a little bit. I heard him talk about that. Seemed like they have one main town. I wouldn't remember the name of it anymore, but it seemed like they had one main town that they would go and buy, like their stables, you know. Now, they didn't buy a great lot because they raised their own wheat, barley and oats, and that was ground up, made into bread and whatever they used flour for. They had their own flour.
Mm-hmm.
They had their own poultry, meat and eggs and milk and things like that. So they don't eat like we do now. They didn't eat like we do now. See, they ate what they had there now.
Mm-hmm.
They had very little money to go buy with, very little money. And what little money they had, I just can't remember. My dad, I'm sure he told me, but I kind of forgot just how come they did have a little money. Now, like the man that had a trade, say like a blacksmith or something like that, they were usually, my dad said they were usually the more wealthy people that they have this job, you know, and if they made 50 cents a day, well, they had 50 cents, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I suppose a lot of days they didn't make that, but it didn't take a lot of money if you don't spend it.
Mm-hmm. Well, now these cattle, they each had a cow. How would they graze? There wouldn't be enough on 5 acres. How would they take care of the cattle?
I think, I think that they had probably some free range area in there that belonged to the Russian government that these cattle run on.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't fenced in or anything like that. I don't remember this for sure now about that. But I know all winter they had long winters, and you know Russia has some pretty rough. Now this is not in the southern part. This is more like in the central part that I'm talking about. And that gets up that Siberia country, you know, where it really gets cold.
Yes.
And I remember Dad said that the livestock was in the barn for months during the winter months.
Well, they'd have to feed them.
Yeah, they cut this grass hay. Well, I guess they were allowed to do that, cut grass hay, and the straw, if they raised wheat, they thrashed the wheat out, you know. You know how they used to do, walk cattle on it, you know, and crump the wheat out and then take the straw. Well, there's nothing thrown away. That straw was utilized, you know, for hay, bedding for the cattle. And
well, how did they harvest their wheat?
with a
Hand
scythe, is that what they call it? Yeah, like that, you know. I never could use one, but I've seen them. Well, that's why they harvest.
And then they would catch
that and make a little bundle out of it. The women would tie this together with a piece of string.
Well,
and
then how would they get the wheat out of the head?
They'd make, they had a circle. They had maybe a couple of horses, you know. They had a pole here and then had a rope, and these horses would walk. They could just walk so big a circle, see. They'd lay that wheat out on the ground, and horses would walk over and thrash that out.
Well.
Then they'd rake the wheat off on the straw and have the wheat, and then they'd clean it up, you know, with the wind, you know.
Yes.
That's how they clean their wheat.
Well.
And then they ground it up to flour. They didn't sell any wheat.
They didn't sell any wheat. Well, did they have to pay taxes?
Not that I know of, no. And they were even told they would have to serve in the army, in the Russian army, but my wife's dad, he was in the Russian army.
Oh, he was?
Oh, yeah. He was in the Russian army, and I think it done him some good. He could talk German, and then he went to Russian school, and he turned out to be an interpreter, and when he got out of the army, he had a good education.
Well.
And he come to the United States, and he was a married man. He had a family with 3 children when he come here. He never did go to school, but he could pick up a newspaper and just read like I can.
Well.
Talk just fluently, very fluently.
Yes.
Very intelligent.
Was that compulsory to serve in the army for?
It was compulsory to one at his age. It was at that time. But my granddad never did have to serve in them. Of course, my dad was too young when he left there, but my granddad never was in the army.
Well.
But my wife's dad, of course, they stayed later, so they didn't come to the United States in 1912.
Oh.
So it got to be a little bit different then.
And then when his time up serving the army, did he go back to this
He went back to this colony, they called them.
Colony.
And he wasn't there just a few days. He said, I'm going to the United States. He said, I'm tired of this.
Mm-hmm.
And his wife got up and they said, well, we're just leaving. They just got up in just a few days.
How did they travel?
Oh, they went in the Volga River on a little boat and went to some place in Germany. There they picked up the train, you know, and got to some town in Germany.
And nobody tried to stop them?
No, they had no problems right at that time. Not that I know of.
Mm-hmm.
Not my wife's folks or my family. Either one of them that I know of had ever had any trouble.
Mm-hmm.
Now later on, back in 21, my dad had a cousin that come up from Russia, and he had problems. He ran away, and they shot him a couple of times, it took him a whole year to get to the United States.
Well,
Bad luck, hard luck. A lot of people died.
Was that during a war or
no, it was right
uprising?
after the war. After the war. It was during the war must have been kind of maybe civil war in Russia. You remember the Bolsheviks when they
Yes.
well, that's when he got away from them.
I see.
He was supposed to go to the army, and he said, I'm not fighting for Russia. He said, I'll go any place and fight for them, but not Russia.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't like Russia.
Was he a married man?
No, he was single. There was a bunch of boys got away, and they finally got to the United States. It took a year.
Well,
When he got to the United States, he had one bullet taken out of his leg. He still had to carry the bullet.
well,
Well, they shot at him,
uh-huh.
tried to stop him.
Yes. Well, I wonder how they... The boys walked at night.
They walked at night. It was cold. Some of them didn't make it. They froze to death.
Oh, is that right? When one would die that way, the rest of them would have to just go off and leave them,
They
wouldn't
just have to go and leave him. That's all.
Uh-huh.
It was a long time before he told us all that stuff.
Yes.
It was a long, long time. It was years.
Mm-hmm. And when they walked, what country did they go into?
Well, now let's see. That would if I had a map, I could just kind of show you, but I can't remember any of the names. Czechoslovakia and some of them. They walked to Germany, and they walked through I think 3 or 4 different countries before they got. They had to go a roundabout way to get by the guards, you know.
Yeah.
They knew all of that. See, they had got that information. They knew where to
They
go.
knew where the guards were, and they had to avoid them.
They had very little money. They worked part-time. If they could find someone that worked to get a little money to buy food and clothes with him.
That would be Russian money, too, wouldn't it?
That was Russian money, yes.
Mm-hmm.
And they finally got into Germany, and I think he said there were 2 or 3 months in Leningrad or something like that to wait for transports and wait. Then they wrote to their friends in the United States, and they send money. I remember this cousin I'm talking about. He's a cousin of my dad. My dad sent him the money. I think it was $75 for a ticket to come over here.
Well,
So.
and where did he leave Germany? What city did he leave Germany to come over? Do you remember?
No, that I don't remember.
Mm-hmm. Where did he land at here in the United States?
He got to New York, and there he got on the train, and we picked him up right down here.
At Shattuck.
At Shattuck.
Mm-hmm. Did he live in this part then?
Yes, he stayed here, and he was a carpenter. He worked for Santa Fe for a long time, and he turned out to be a pretty good carpenter, and was quite well-to-do when he died several years ago.
Uh-huh. Did he marry and raise a family?
Yes, he married a girl that was born right here in this county.
Well, that's a success story, and I'm happy to get that.
Yeah, they just like I say, some of them people that have made up their mind, they wasn't going back to Russia anymore.
Mm-hmm.
My dad didn't like Russia. Oh, and that's even in me yet.
Yes.
That's still in me. I don't like it.
And you married this girl from Nebraska, and you lived out here on this farm. How many children did you have?
We just had one boy.
One boy. Is he still living?
Yeah, he lives in Florida.
In Florida?
Yeah.
He doesn't like Oklahoma.
No, it's too cold for him here, he said. He didn't like cold weather.
Uh-huh.
So when I got out of college in 1965, in the fall then of 65, he said, well, I'm going to Florida. And when he just got up and got in the car, and he didn't know a soul in Florida. We knew, my wife and I knew a couple in Florida that used to live at Higgins, Texas, and we were acquainted with them. So I just got on the phone and called him, and I said, Larry's coming down there, so I wish you'd kind of look in on him a little bit. I told Larry where to go.
Mm-hmm.
So he went down there, got a job within 2 weeks, and he's still there. He's got a real good job now.
He likes it,
He likes Florida.
and he's happy there.
He's
Well,
very
aren't you glad that he's happy?
Yes, yes. We were down there during November. We spent a month down there with him.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
How do you like Florida?
Oh, I love Florida.
I do too. I've been there, and I love it.
We go to Orlando. That's where Larry lives, and then of course it's like this last time we fly down there. We get nowhere. I don't like to drive that far. We have drove it, but we fly more than we.
Mm-hmm.
So he picked us up at the airport. We got down there at midnight. He picked us up at the airport, and he had an apartment for us. We don't stay with them because they got Larry has a second wife, and she has 3 children. And they're all going to college, working someplace, and they're the workingest family you ever saw in your life. All hours of the night, everything is going, and they go to work here, and they go to work there. And so I said, well, get us an apartment. We won't even stay there because I want to sleep, and I want to sleep late if I want to.
Mm-hmm.
So he had a car there for us when we got to the apartment.
Mm-hmm.
And we'd go when we want to, come when we want to.
Well, that's
had
nice.
a great time.
That's nice. Mm-hmm. Do you remember the dirt storm days here?
Do
Do you remember the dirt storm days?
Yes, quite well, yes.
Tell me about them. How did they affect you? Did it affect your crops?
Well, yes, it affected our crops. I only remember of one time that we had part of our wheat crop that blew out. We never did have it blow out like they did further north and west of us. We never had this in Ellis County
Mm-hmm.
On most of the farms. My farm out here southeast of town is not sandy at all. It's pretty soil, and it don't blow easy.
Mm-hmm.
So we didn't have that problem, but we didn't raise much. We didn't raise much wheat, and we didn't raise much feed for our cattle either.
Yes.
And of course, back in them days, I was still stay at home, then before I was married. We milked 6, 7 cows, and we had a few horses, several horses, 4 head of horses, I think it was. And we had to raise feed for them. Sometimes it was pretty scarce. Pretty scarce.
Yes.
And then, of course, I would plant the wheat, and of course, the few cows to feed milk. I thought Dad could do that. So we got through sowing my wheat in the fall. I started looking for work. Me and my neighbor friend, we got together and I had an old truck, and we started driving and went to Kansas and worked a day or 2 here in Colorado. And finally got up into Nebraska and in the sugar beet country.
Mm-hmm.
The western part along the North Platte River. And that's where I met my wife.
Well.
We got a job up there working for Great Western Sugar Company. Made pretty good money. We made $7 a day back when they.
Well, that was good
That
wages.
was good money.
Yes.
But we had to work awful hard.
Yeah.
You
You earned it.
We earned every bit of it. So after that, I'd go back every fall and work during the sugar beet harvest. I'd work out during October, November, December up there.
Mm-hmm.
And finally, in '38, we got married and didn't go back anymore. Well, I said we have going back, but I didn't go back to work.
Yes. Yes.
See, then I took the farm over here in '38. I took the farm over, you know, and
Do you remember that Black Sunday?
I wasn't here. I was in Kansas, in eastern Kansas. I was in Wichita, Kansas that day. But it got pretty dark up there, too,
Oh, it
but
did.
not like it did here.
Mm-hmm.
But, yes, it got dark in Wichita, but not that
It's
dark.
not black.
No.
Mm-hmm.
When I come home a couple of days later, when they told me what they had here, well, I was glad I wasn't here.
Yes, it was terrible. But you know, since it happened, I'm glad that I was here to witness it, but I don't want to see it
You
again.
don't want to see it again, that's
No.
right.
Were you in World War II?
No.
You weren't called up for
No,
it?
I wasn't called up. No, I was classified as, they said my work was essential. I was a pharmacist. They said it was essential.
Mm-hmm.
And I met with the USDA board, and they said they thought I would do more good out there, and I was paying some income tax at the time, too.
Mm-hmm.
And I had all my papers then, showed them how much tax I paid, and they said, well, that's more than you might do out there on the front line, so you stay home.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it didn't hurt my feelings.
No. But it would have been heartbreaking, though, if you'd have had to gone and fought the Germans, wouldn't it? Or not?
Well, no, I don't think it would have too much, because I had made up my mind that they were going to take over the world, and I wasn't going to let them.
Uh-huh.
So that's the way I felt about it.
You were living in a free country?
I was living in a free country.
And you wanted it left free?
And I wanted to be stay free, too.
Well, that's...
So I don't think it would have hurt me too much. I know I talked to some of the boys, German boys. They said it didn't bother me one bit, because we've got what we want here, and we're going to try to keep it.
Yes. If Hitler had been successful, would our country be free today?
I don't think so. I don't know. I don't know too much about things like that, but I don't feel like we would be. And I'm a little bit afraid of Russia too.
I am too.
I'm a little bit afraid of Russia.
Mm-hmm.
Now we have a woman here in town that went to Esther Craft, Elsie Craft. She went to Russia here this past summer.
Oh, she did?
Yeah. And she had a talk up here at the senior citizen. She gave us a talk what she's seen and what she taught us. And her family's background comes from Russia too.
Mm-hmm.
But she don't want nothing to do with the Russians. She don't want to go back.
Mm-hmm.
She didn't like it at all over there, and it's nice to see it, it's nice to go there and look at it, but it's sure nice to go away and go home.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Esther Craft, you said?
Elsie.
Oh,
Elsie
Elsie.
Craft.
I wonder if we could interview her.
Well, I should have, maybe if I'd have thought of it, maybe I'd have told Bill Deal about her. Bill should have known that too, that she was over there.
Mm-hmm.
It might be interesting to talk to her.
I think so. I think it would be. Mm-hmm. I don't know whether we can do it today or not. We've already got our schedule pretty well
pretty
filled
well scheduled.
But, you know, this young man that's with me, he's from the Historical Society.
Mm-hmm.
And he works all over Oklahoma.
Mm-hmm.
And the executive director told me, he says, if you can get Bill or Joe to come out, he says, you get him because he's good. And he says, we need more history out in northwest Oklahoma and the Panhandle. So whenever I do get him out here, why, I keep his schedule filled. You told me that you like to fly. When did you start learning to fly? What age?
Let's see, I must have been about 22.
Mm-hmm. Before you were married.
Oh, yes.
And then what did you do? Just fly all over the country?
Well, I just kind of fly wherever I was. I started this thing up in western Nebraska, and I worked in the sugar beet field. I got acquainted with a fellow there. He was a fanatic about flying, and he wanted he was going to make a career out of it. And he had bought him an old wore-out airplane. Sunday afternoons, I'd buy the gas, and we would fly. And then finally, I got to where I'd fly a little bit, and he got his commercial license, then got a job with an airline that flew to old Mexico.
Uh-huh.
And on the way back one time, not too many years after that, on the way back, he flew into a mountain in New Mexico. He flew to old Mexico, that's what it is. And New Mexico flew into a mountain and killed himself.
Oh, my.
Weather was bad, he couldn't see where he'd go.
Yeah.
The instruments back in them days weren't like they are now.
No.
I never did learn to fly with it by instrument. I always had to see the ground.
Yes.
I never did.
Uh-huh.
I never could make anything out of it because after I got married, well, my wife didn't really want me to fly either, but I still kept it up. I have to have 10 hours a year to keep my license up.
Mm-hmm.
And that's about what I fly. And of course, I don't have my license anymore. I've had a heart attack, and they say you can't have a license for. But I still do. I still fly.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not that bad a shape.
Well, did that dishearten you to fly when your friend was
No.
killed out there? No?
No, I don't. You mean when this friend was
Yes.
killed? No. That didn't bother me with one bit. That's just like driving down the highway and somebody was ready to get killed and people drive by and look at that. Get in the car and drive off. This is the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
I had a friend here that got killed right here north of town there a couple of miles in an airplane. And it didn't bother me one bit.
Well.
It is just something that you take for granted, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
My son flies. And my grandson is 14 years old and he's starting to fly.
Oh.
From my mother's side of the family, I can't think of any of the men that aren't pilots.
Oh, is that
On
right?
my mother's side of the family, they're all pilots.
Mm-hmm.
We even got some of them that jump out of an airplane every other day.
Well, they just love to fly.
Just love to get in the air and jump out or do something.
Are there any of them pilots on these big airlines?
Yeah.
Oh, they are?
Yeah, that's some who flies for Dell Airlines. Got one that he's a paratrooper. I mean, he teaches jumping out of airplanes in the Army.
Uh-huh.
And he's a rigger. He rigs the parachutes.
Yes.
And he trains on weekends. He lives in Wichita right now. On weekends, he takes a bunch of boys up and he trains them to jump out of jump. One day he goes out with them,
Mm-hmm.
jumps out. He's got something like 2,000 jumps to his credit.
Well.
He likes to do it. He thinks
Uh-huh.
it's great sport.
Yes. Well, that's great. Do you remember when the war ended? World War II ended?
Yeah.
Did Shattuck have a big celebration?
The day it ended, I was at Arnett. Yes, it did. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody hollered and jumped up and down, and people. Yeah, everybody was so glad.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was in Arnett that day when the news come.
Yes. And did they have a big dance that night?
No, not that I know of. I lived out on the farm when I went back home, and no, I don't remember if anything else going on other than I'm sure there was some, but I never did know about it.
Was that when that song came out, when Johnny Comes Marching Home? Or was that when they left?
I don't remember.
I can't either.
I don't remember.
Did you ever go down to the railroad and wave by a bunch of boys leaving?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I had some friends that mostly on Sunday afternoons, I remember, they would get on a bus at Arnett.
Oh.
Get on a bus and they'd take them to Fort Sill. I think that's where they went. I really don't remember. Yeah, Fort Sill most of them went, yeah.
Oh, they didn't take any by train?
Not that I can think of. Not one that I can think of. My brother, he lived at Woodward at the time, and he went by train because he joined the Navy. He knew he had to go, and he wanted to be in the Navy, so
Yes.
he joined the Navy. And I think he's in there 5 years. I'd like to see that be in 5 years.
Was he in any battles, or?
Well, I guess you'd call it a battle. He was in there a number of them. He was on a supply ship.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
He didn't set foot on ground for 3 years.
Oh,
He lost his sense of direction. He still don't have it back.
well.
But he told me of some battles that they had. The first 2 trips that he made to England, they didn't have no guns on their boat at all. They hauled sugar out of Cuba.
Mm-hmm.
That's what, well, they hauled other supplies too, but that's what they started with.
Mm-hmm.
And they were attacked a number of times. They always went in convoys, especially a little later in the war. They went in convoys, maybe a couple of hundred ships or something like that. A lot of ships together, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Had battleships around them. But they were attacked one night, and he said all night long. Because it didn't make any difference. You could sit any place and read a newspaper. Just light enough from some guns going off, you know.
Mm-hmm.
He said that was, and he didn't tell me that till about 4 years ago.
Well.
He didn't want to talk about it because he'd seen so many people die that night. There was a lot of tankers in that group.
Mm-hmm.
They ruptured them, and all this cruise, this oil come out on top and caught fire.
Oh.
You'd see them swimming around in that fire and hollering for help, you know.
Mm-hmm.
They said there was nothing we could do.
Mm-hmm.
He said, I see thousands of them die that night.
Oh my. Now that would be the German submarines.
German submarines attacked them.
Mm-hmm.
They have no idea how many submarines there were, but there was a lot of them.
Mm-hmm.
He said that convoy lost all the ships.
Is that right?
Yeah, a lot of, even some of the battleships were sunk. Supply ships, it was terrible. He never would say how many ships were lost. He never did. He knew, but he never did say.
Mm-hmm.
He says, you didn't get the truth about that anyway after. He said, so I'm not going to say it.
Mm-hmm.
How many ships there was, I don't know.
Wonder, they were on their way to England.
They were on their way to England, yeah.
And wonder just where that battle took place.
That I don't know. He never did say where the battle took place, but it wasn't too far from our shore. I know that.
Oh, from our shore?
Yeah, they attacked us pretty close to home. Yeah.
Would it be about halfway?
Possibly, yeah, somewhere in that. He never did exactly say it.
Mm-hmm.
Just like to say,
Oh, I bet they were scared.
He don't talk about it. You can't get much out of him. He don't talk.
Well, you can't blame him.
No, I've never tried to get a lot out of him because I know it's nothing pleasant to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
And I know he didn't want to, so I never said much about it.
Mm-hmm.
If he says anything, he makes the decision to tell me. I don't ask him anything.
Oh, now, his ship got through then. The ship that he was on got through it.
Yeah, the ship got through. He never had a ship shot out from under him. He always never lost a ship.
Mm-hmm.
But he said the first 2 trips he made across, they didn't even have a gun with him.
Well.
There wasn't any guns here. We weren't ready for it. See?
No, that's
We weren't ready for it. There wasn't that many guns around.
They were just lucky.
They were lucky.
Mm-hmm.
Real lucky.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he lost a sense of direction. He lives in Tulsa, and he'll go any place he wants to, but he doesn't know what direction he's going in.
Well, what are your plans for the future now?
I have retired in the fall of 1976. I retired, and I moved to town. I done little odd jobs. People would leave me alone, you know. They knew I'd work and liked to work and could work. So I done little odd jobs around town. I helped out at the elementary school in the fall of the year, you know, get it ready to start school. And maybe a couple of months I'd worked there. Then I went down to the hydro farm they had north of the railroad track here.
Mm-hmm.
Worked down there in the fall of the year as a maintenance man, you know, getting things ready for the winter, you know. And I do a lot of fishing. I enjoy my retirement very much.
Good, I'm glad.
We do a lot of traveling.
Mm-hmm.
My wife and I, we just like 4 more states, and we've been every state in the union.
Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Well.
I'm really going to try to make that. I don't know whether I will or not. I'm 73 years old now, and
Well, that's not old.
No, I don't feel that way, but you know, I have to slow down once in a while. No, at 73, I don't feel like I'm living. I still just, I cut my own firewood. I've got my own fireplace, cut my own firewood, enjoy it very much. I could afford to pay my gas bill, but I want to burn wood. I just love to see a nice wood fire in the fireplace.
Mm-hmm. Have you had any more heart attacks?
No.
Was that one serious?
Well, I had kind of a small one since then, but they didn't slow me down too much. I had Dr. Freeman out of Oklahoma City. He's been my doctor.
Mm-hmm.
And about 5-6 months ago, he said, "You're fine. You just do anything you want to."
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I'm doing.
Is that in the cardiac?
Yeah, the cardiac.
Vascular. Cardiac vascular.
Yeah,
clinic.
that's what it was.
Mm-hmm.
I went to Oklahoma City. They thought I'd have to have a surgery, but I didn't.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's good.
So I spent 32 days in the hospital though.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, got over it.
Mm-hmm. In Oklahoma City?
No, most of it up here. I was in Oklahoma City 4 days. They
Mm-hmm.
took me down there to see whether I needed surgery.
Mm-hmm.
They said no, so they brought me back up here again.
Did they give you that dye test?
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh. Well, I hope you never have another one.
Oh, I do too. I want to see what happens next around here.
You want to make those trips, don't
Yeah, I
you?
want to make those trips, yeah.
Uh-huh. Can you think of anything else that...
No, I can't really right now. About the only way I can think of things is somebody asks me a question and I might...
Your son didn't have to go to Vietnam or any place like that?
No, he was too young.
Uh-huh.
No, yeah, Vietnam, yes. He would have had to go, but he had a little flare-up. But he'd get a heartbeat in between right at that time.
Mm-hmm.
In high school, when he was in high school.
Mm-hmm.
And when he was called up for the draft, why, the doctor up here said he's not fit to go to the Army.
Mm-hmm.
They said he might outgrow that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he almost did until when we were down there in November. One night, about 11 o'clock, my daughter-in-law come down to the apartment we stayed in, was there in the hospital.
Well,
Said he had that beat again in between. And that's the first time that he had it for 18 years.
well,
But they have some medication now, and last time we talked to him, he's pushing himself a little too much.
what kind of work does he do?
Well, he's what they call a project manager for the school system in Orange County. He's got the whole county. He's got 300 buildings to take care of.
Well,
And this thing that has come up, in the last few years about the asbestos in the ceilings, the
yes,
material.
yes.
Well, they sent him to school in Atlanta, Georgia, to learn how to take this out. So now he's turned out to be an asbestos consultant.
Mm-hmm.
And on weekends, the Eastern Seaboard Railroad, they fly him from wherever they have a building that they think that might be some of them, and they take him over there.
Mm-hmm.
He goes through it, he checks it out, and he'll say yes or no. You got it? And if you got it, he tells them how to take it out.
Mm-hmm.
And so he leaves usually Friday evening after he gets off of work. He goes to the airport and goes someplace, Alabama, or last week he was in North Carolina,
Well,
and he just someplace, maybe someplace.
well, he should be careful.
Yes, he's been real careful. They pay him awful well.
Well, yes, I'd think so.
He gets a lot of money per day.
Mm-hmm.
He's paid for the day, and he leaves Friday evening, and he don't quit working until he's through, and then he comes back home. He don't sleep.
And then he works regular hours through the week.
Through the week at the
Oh.
school, yes.
He's entirely doing...
He's pushing it too much.
Yes, he is.
I've told him that too. But they offer him $400 a day. That's pretty big money. So, that's...
Yes, that's big money. But I bet he pays big taxes, too.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah, they pay him that. Plus his expense. They pay all his expenses. They pay for the airplane trip and his meals and everything.
Now, is that a branch of the government that's doing
No,
this?
it's the Eastern Seaboard Railroad Company.
I see.
They're doing that.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's great. How many children does he have
He has one boy
of his own?
of his own.
Mm-hmm.
3 stepchildren, 2 girls and another boy.
Mm-hmm.
The girls are old enough. One of them got married last summer.
Mm-hmm.
She's working in Tallahassee, Florida. She's 24 years old. The other girl, she's still working and going to college in Orlando.
Mm-hmm.
And the boy, he's got one more year of high school, and he's out of high school.
Well, what about his boy? How old is he?
He's 14, and he's in the 9th grade. And he's going to be a pilot or an engineer of some kind. I don't know exactly what he'll be.
Does he get to see his boy very often?
Oh, yes, they live in the same town.
Oh, do they?
Oh, yeah, every weekend he spends weekends down there. Oh, yeah.
Well, that's great.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Oh,
And you folks have moved in town. What are you doing, renting your farm out?
Yes, I'm renting my farm out.
Mm-hmm. You have a family living on it, do you?
Yes, I have a family living in the house. And like you say, it's not like it would be if you were there.
Yes.
But I had in mind selling the place with the homestead on it.
Mm-hmm.
But my wife and my son didn't want me to, so I didn't.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any gas wells on your place?
We have one gas well.
Mm-hmm. Is it producing good?
Yeah, well, not great big, but it's
Doing a little.
doing all right, yeah.
Well, isn't this quite a gas field in here?
Oh yes, there's quite a lot of gas around here.
Mm-hmm.
They're even starting back up here, up toward your country, toward Slap Out, around Catesby. That's when the first oil in Ellis County was discovered in that area. And the wells have depleted. Now they're going back in and doing a lot of drilling again in the Catesby area.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, south part of the county is.
I can't understand that. If a well goes dry, how come they can drill another hole and bring in another well?
Well, it's
Do they go deeper?
They go deeper as a rule.
They do.
And a little different treatment sometimes. Sometimes they go back in the same hole with a different treatment, brings in the gas. See, they're like anybody else. They learn something new every day.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's right. Does Shattuck look the same today as it did when you first remembered it?
Pretty much the same, yes. However, I didn't learn to know Shattuck until I got high school age.
Mm-hmm.
Our town was Higgins, Texas.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes.
We hauled our wheat up there. They paid a little more for wheat.
Mm-hmm.
And for some reason, then the folks would go buy their groceries there too. And they're trading there.
Were they closer to Higgins?
No, a little bit further. But we got 10 cents a bushel more for wheat over there than we did here.
Yes.
So that was the reason. And then there was an old German man over there on a great big store. And he charged everything for a whole year, He charged all the groceries and their clothing and everything. So that was one of the reasons.
Mm-hmm.
And they liked this man. He was quite a businessman.
They used to buy things on time, pay after harvest.
Right. Pay after harvest.
Then if they didn't have a harvest, what happened?
Well, this man at Higgins, he was very, very lean about that. Well, he said, maybe you can pay me next year. Then he'd do it again, see.
Mm-hmm.
There was one here in Shattuck, he didn't do it that way. If they couldn't pay for it then in the harvest, he'd take the land away from them. Yeah. But this man, Alec Lawman, you've probably read some, he had about 5, 6, 7 years ago, pretty good write-up in Daily Oklahoma.
Mm-hmm.
How he come to this country, and he was a German.
Mm-hmm.
He got to Higgins, and he told me the whole story, even before I read it in the paper one time. We know him quite well.
Tell me about it.
He come to Higgins, and he had $2.36 money. That's all he had. Well, he bought him a piece of leather and an old shoe lath and started to be a shoe cobbler.
Mm-hmm.
Made a little money, built him a store, started selling groceries, graduates, and then clothing, farm implements, and everything else. Charged everything, and he told me not too many years before he died. He said, if I had any man or anybody that never did pay their bills, he said, I don't know it.
Mm-hmm.
He said people back 30 years after the Depression even would send him money from all over the United States. Said, well, we bought so-and-so at your store and we didn't pay for it. Here's the money.
Mm-hmm.
He never pushed anybody.
Mm-hmm.
And so they say, well, that's the reason that people feel like, well, we owe him.
Yes, it's working now. Okay. You were going to tell me about the Lobbins.
Lobbins, yeah, Jonah Lobbin, T.R. T.R. dead now. Jonah's still alive as far as I know. I have dealt quite a little bit with Jonah. In the late 50s, I went to work for soil conservation here, and I was the district manager, and I got acquainted. I knew a lot of people over the whole northwest Oklahoma. I still know a lot of people. But Jonah, he liked to sow this grass back in the soil bank days. You know what we call soil bank.
Yeah.
Well, he got in on that, and of course I was dealing over here in the grass seats, you know, and so I done a lot of business with Jonah. I like Jonah very much. Very honest man. Well, never did deal with any of the rest of the Lawbans except this one at Higgins, Alec Lawban. I dealt with him a lot in my younger days when I was working on the farm. But I think the Lawbans were a type of people that were very aggressive people. And some of the younger ones, when you hear the things that one problem is, then you think, well, they're not as good a man as their dad is, but they all turned out to be quite prominent people in that area.
Yes.
You probably know Madu.
I know T.R. and his wife.
Oh, T.R.
Well, what were your duties now? Just what did you do in this soil conservation district?
I was the district manager. I took care of all, was responsible for all this grass soil on this farm, the work that we did that the soil conservation does with the farmer, like cutting grass seed, planting grass seed, and getting all that stuff. Well, I was responsible for that.
I see. Now, would they have to plow this up to plant the grass?
Usually I'd plow it up and put a cover crop on what we call a cover crop.
Yeah.
Planted to some kind of a cane and not harvested. And then sow the grass seed right into this here.
What years did you work at that?
I started in 57 and worked till 66. The soil bank days were pretty well over, but it seemed like there was a lot of other things. We harvested a lot of grass seed in this area right here, and I sold a lot of grass seeds to some of the big seed companies in the area. Like Amarillo, Texas, Lubbock, Texas, and Dodge City, Garden City, and all. I sold a lot of grass seed there.
How do you harvest grass seed?
We done it with a combine. Just like
with a combine?
Wheat. Yeah, like it's cutting wheat.
Well, that grass seed is so fine, I would think it would just...
Oh, we didn't get all of it either.
You didn't?
No, we didn't get all of it, but we made it pay off. We made it pay.
And it would thrash it and go up into the bin just like wheat or anything else? Well,
we had a lot of trash in it. It was a lot trashier. And it wasn't, the seed wasn't pure. I mean, there was a lot of... Then we had cleaners here and back here on the fairgrounds that we had. We process our own seed. We clean our own seed, clean it up, and ship it to these seed companies, sell it to them.
yes.
I sold a lot of seed to Enid.
Well,
Johnson Seed Company, I sold a lot of seed over there.
harvested right here in Shattuck?
Harvested right here in Ellis County.
Well,
Yeah.
well,
We had one farm, we had 14 combines going.
well,
We made a bunch of money for it. And this was money that was made in Ellis County, and it stayed right here. It didn't go into the government trade. It stayed right. They still got the money.
oh, is that right?
Yeah, they still got the money.
In this, but it has to be in this district.
Has to be in this district, yeah. So if I didn't make any money, I was out of a job, see, because I got paid out of that, see.
I see. So you worked to make the money.
So I worked to make money. I felt like we done pretty good.
Yes, I
We in
see.
Beaver County and Harper County.
Yes.
One year I had Harper County, we had so much grass seed to sow here. One year we sowed 22,400 acres to grass.
Is that right?
And we got behind, so I asked the boys from Buffalo when they got through, they come over and helped us, see, to sow this. So that's the reason I know some of the people in that were working with the soil conservation around Buffalo at that time.
Yes.
Matter of fact, I was approached just a day or two ago with her, and a lady come and said, "You ought to know my dad. He worked for soil conservation in Buffalo all the time."
Yes.
Well, I can't remember names. If I'd see the man, I'd probably say yes, I know him, but names I can't remember.
Yes. Well, wasn't there a drought in 57 or somewhere in the late 50s? Wasn't that the reason they started sowing the
It was a little bit earlier. We had pretty severe drought here in 56.
56.
Yeah. And then they come out with the soil bank days, put this land in the soil back to grass. And really the program's intentions were to keep this in grass, never to be plowed up again.
Yes.
But after the 10 year was the maximum of the length contract, and after 10 years, and the southeast part of the county, get that cinder country, a lot of sand, you got awful sorry soil down, the sorriest soil in Alice County is down in there.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the best soil is down there too, but it can't be farmed, it's too rough.
Oh, mm-hmm.
But anyway, them people, they go in there and they sow everything back to grass again. And then a little later on, about the time this soil bank stuff all come out, why they start hitting oil down in there, and there's a lot of oil wells in that part of the county. A lot of wealthy people down there. They were poor people then. They're wealthy people now. There's millionaires live down in there.
All from this gas and oil.
From this gas and oil. Then they get all this money, then they go in there and they buy a great big tractor and a great big plow, and they go and plow all that up again. So, well, that wasn't the intention of the program, but they done it. After it was out of the program, it was there, they could do what they wanted to. So they plowed it all up again. And one of these days, however, we have better farmers now. Our farmers, they do things different than they did back in the dust bowl days.
That's right.
They got this big equipment, the field starts blowing. They can tear it up in just a few hours because it won't blow.
And then they're plowing differently.
Yeah, different.
They're leaving the trash on top of the ground.
What we call stubble mulch farming. I was a great promoter in stubble mulch back in the late 50s when that started. I was with the soil conservation at that time. We bought stubble mulch equipment and rented out to farmers 50 cents an acre just to get them to try it, you know. I was still farming. I'd work in town daytime, farm at night, you know. And I had stubble mulch equipment, and I pushed it a lot. I know a man come out here from Florida, Texas. He stopped here one day and he said, "Boys, I know you're working on that, but if you get the farmers to do that, says you've done something." Well, I think we got them to do it. We got them to do it.
Yes.
But I worked pretty hard at that, and we'd have demonstrations, you know, and show them how it's done.
Well, that's great. And I think there's not so much danger of another dust bowl
I don't
here
think so.
as there used to be.
Just like I say, we've got the big equipment now, and if it does start blowing, we can stop it within a few hours.
That's right. Did you know Aubrey Wilson at Beaver?
I know the name, but
he was the county agent.
County agent, yes. Yeah. I knew him at one time, yes. I mean, the name is real familiar, but I can't place the man in my mind at all.
He's in Woodward now.
In Woodward?
Yes.
How old a man is he now?
Oh, in his late 50s, I'd judge.
Yeah, well, I remember the name, yeah.
He was at Beaver for years as county agent.
Yes.
They liked him up there very much.
Personally, I almost have to say, no, I don't know him, but I do know of him.
You probably have heard of him because he did a lot of good in that. And he advocated the farmers to do the stubble
mulching, yeah. Oh, we had quite a number of them. I know, especially around the Beaver in the Panhandle counties, they really worked on that.
And they're fertilizing the ground, too.
Oh, yeah, we're fertilizing. There's a lot of fertilizer being done here in this area.
Which do you prefer, the liquid or the granules?
The granules. I put liquid on 1 year, and I wasn't quite satisfied. I couldn't say why I wasn't, but I wasn't happy with it. And when I quit farming in 76, I had put on fertilizer 14 years straight before I quit. And we were raising good wheat crops too. I remember the last crop that I cut, I planted wheat in 76 and I cut it in 77. My wheat made 46 bushels.
Well.
And a lot of them wheat around in that area, they're just making 10 and 12. But I had put this on for years and years, and like some of them say, well, you can put on too much, it'll burn when it gets dry. Now, I don't agree with that, I don't. I think if you put on a little fertilizer, it turns dry, it even grows a little bit better. It helps it.
Yes.
It helps it.
Well, it has a better root system.
Has a better root system. It's a better plant.
Uh-huh.
It's a better, healthier plant.
Yes. My husband fertilized 1 year, then he'd summer fallow that, and then he'd, what he planted, he'd fertilize that, and just every other way.
Yeah,
year.
that's kind of the way I done it, yeah. Always fertilize some every year. And I grazed a lot of my wheat out. And see, but because I was more in the cow business than I was a farmer. And I get a little early plowing. I get about 30 to 40 days ahead plowing, and that early plowing, that's great. That's great. That's the reason and of course I made more money grazing my wheat out than I could harvest and sell it with the bush load. So.
That's what I've heard, that the pounds you put on the cattle would bring more money than
the wheat did.
Well,
that's right.
At that time. Does that still hold?
Not right now with the depressed cattle price. It has been working, and we are raising more bushel per acre now with the fertilizer, and the price is a little better than it was too. But it's still not. My way of looking, it's not coming out quite right. You know, as far as the farming is concerned. But at the same time, we have to say that most farmers in this area here that I know are doing a pretty good job of managing anyway. Staying in the business, we have nobody. We have one man sold out here, and he was no farmer. He was a beer drinker, and he couldn't make it go up, and they sold him out about 2 years ago. That's the only one. I had a man tell me one time, he was down here buying a claim bottle one time, and I said, well, you see a pickup go down the road, and it's got a trailer tied behind him, and then they're going to bolt behind that, you know. Well, he says, them farmers, they're doing pretty good. I said, that's not a farmer. When they do that, that's not a farmer, because most farmers don't invest in things like that. Well, I said, how come the farmers always complain and never has any money, but yet when he dies, he's the richest man in the cemetery? Well, I said, there you are. He says he's always got his money tied up in everything. He's got tractors and cattle and land and everything. His money's tied up. He never has any money. And, of course, now since we're having this oil play in here, it's a little different story now.
Yes.
But I was talking about back in them days. That's 15, 20 years ago.
Yes.
But now he said, well, he's the richest man in the cemetery. Well, maybe he had a little when he died, but he never had any. Well, most farmers enjoy it.
Well, you expect them to have more when they died and when they started out.
That's right, sure.
They've had a lifetime to make it in.
That's right.
Is there very much of this going on down here around Shattuck, where the farmers has gone in debt to buy this machinery, and then they're having their farms foreclosed on?
Very little. And it's going to happen. We're going to have some more of that right in the near future. But basically, no, we haven't. Just like I said, I know of only one man that's been sold out, and he didn't take care of his business.
Yes.
That's the reason it was sold out. But now most of the people that live out that are farmers, they own some land. They may not own all the royalty, but they usually at least have half of it or more. Well, they lease every few years. You know, that has kept them going, and some of them got quite wealthy. We had some farmers around here in the last 20 years. They're real wealthy people. And because just the reason that they own this land, and this royalty is what's kept it. It's not the farm. The farm business made them rich. It was the oil business that made them rich. But we have nobody that has been sold out, except this one.
Well, you've been reading about it, though.
I've been reading about it, yes, and I know. I have been to places. We were up in Nebraska, western Nebraska, 2 years ago, where my wife's family is, and they were selling out left and right then. Just not over 2 weeks ago, my sister-in-law, we talked to her over the telephone, and she said, well, they're selling out any farmers yet? And I said, no, there's nothing being sold out down here. Well, he said, the wheat farmer up here isn't being sold out either. It's this farmer that raises corn, beans, and sugar beets. They're selling them out, but the wheat farmer not.
Well, how come? That's all
Well,
cash crops.
the beets and the beans and the corn are down in the North Platte Valley and they're irrigated. Them people, when we talk 100 pounds of air fertilizer the acre, maybe $15, $20, $30 an acre, they're talking $300 fertilizer per acre. See,
Yes.
the wheat farm is up on a higher elevation. It's not irrigated. It's not a dry land farming, and it's amazing what kind of a crop they can raise on with almost no rain at all up there. It's
That's
amazing.
good country though up there.
Good wheat country. Good wheat country. I have some friends up there. Not too many years back, we were up there, and it was in August, and he said, well, I'm going to start growing wheat tomorrow, rain or shine. And it hadn't rained all summer.
Wow.
But he farms big. He has got 3,000 acres of wheat ground, and he farmed 1,500 acres. One year, then the next year he farms this over here. But it takes care of the 1,500 acres over there, and he had enough moisture. I got a letter from him later on. He said, all my wheat come up. Hadn't rained yet.
What's the worst blizzard that you can remember?
Possibly 1938. And I had one since that I'll never forget. It was 72. We had a pretty bad one here. And the reason that one, I can't forget that one, I own a farm up north of town here too, north about 12 miles. And I went up there Saturday morning. I had some cattle. I bought some cattle in Arkansas, 106 head. And they brought them Saturday morning, and I was up there and unloaded these calves. And they didn't look good to me at all. They looked sick, you know. My goodness, I thought I made a bad deal here. Unload them, had them corralled, and just walking around, catching them and giving them a shot of penicillin and feeding them a little. And next morning, I was going to go up there and open the gate and turn them out on a wheat pasture. Well, here come this big snowstorm. I couldn't get up there. I didn't get up till Friday night, about dark, when I finally got up there. Had 2 dead ones. Cattle looked terrible. That's the reason I can't forget that. I had borrowed the money to buy these cattle. I don't remember what I had borrowed, around $11,000, $12,000 to buy these cattle with. Could have lost all of them in that storm, but I didn't. It's lost 2.
Well, you were lucky.
Yeah, I was really lucky. Now, and then when I did get up there, I had my vaccine all with me, so I started catching the sickest ones. They didn't run away anymore. They were so sick they didn't run, you know. Just catch them, give them a shot of penicillin, open the gate, turn them out. Now, the snow was all blowed off the wheat ground, just on low places maybe. There was a little wheat out there, and then cattle went out there and they started eating that wheat. You wouldn't believe how much good they done. In a week's time, you couldn't tell them. They were the same cattle hardly anymore. And I made real good money on them cattle.
Well, that's great.
Real good money. But the good Lord took care of everything. He says, I could have lost every one of them the way the weather was. Oh, boy.
I remember that storm out there at Slap Alley. It started from the southeast, and then it changed to the northwest. And the drift was so high against our door that we couldn't get our door open. We couldn't get out of the house.
Yeah, I know.
Well, what about the one, you said another one?
38.
In 38. What about that one?
That's the year I got married. I got married in January. My wife and I come back home in February. And that hit, I don't remember what day that one was, but that lasted 3 full days. We couldn't even get out of the house. We didn't have a lot of cattle at that time. We had a few milk cows, and that's all. But there too, like you say, you get out on one of them snow drifts and walk right over the house.
Yes.
That was terrible.
Well, see, we had another bad one in 62. No, it had to be 58 or 59. We were running a grade A dairy, and he just filled those pans full
Oh,
The cattle, you couldn't hardly see the cattle. They were just buried in.
I don't remember that much. I must say in the early 60s maybe, or late 50s.
It had to be the late 50s because we quit the business in 60.
Mm-hmm.
It had to be the late 50s. Maybe that storm didn't reach down here.
It might not, might
Sometimes
not.
we get storms and you folks
Oh,
won't.
I know. You know, I can tell the difference from my farm south of town, that one north of town, 20 miles in between. I can
Yeah.
tell the difference.
Yeah. Okay, can you think of anything else?
No, just really can't. I think I told everything I know.
Well, I'm pleased to meet you, and you never did hear of Bryce Jackson's name while you was in that soil just conservation work.
I don't remember that I did.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure I did, but like I say, names are awful hard for me to remember.
Bryce always cooperated with you fellows.
Pardon?
Bryce always cooperated with you.
Oh, yeah,
man.
yeah.
And
We had a lot of good friends on the farm.
mm-hmm. But you didn't work around Slap Out much, you said.
No, I just went the Ellis County line. That was kind of
Oh, I see. Just so
well, we'd overlap a little bit, and the man that worked up in Beaver County, he'd overlap a little bit. It depended on where the farmer owned most of his land, which once one got to work. So that's the way it was all around us. I done quite a little work in Texas. They liked us better over here at the Texas for some reason. I don't know why.
Well, it's been nice visiting with you.
Well, I sure enjoyed visiting with you.
And I think we've got a lot of history here.
Well, I hope it's something you can use.
It is, and I'm real proud to be the one to interview you. I was afraid they was going to let you go to the young man, and I wanted to interview you.
Oh yeah, we have those. There's a good light coming from the window. Okay, this is July 8th, 1986. This is Joe Todd and Berenice Jackson, and interview with Mr. Victor Klein in Shattuck, Oklahoma. Where were you born?
I was born right here in this county.
When's your birthday?
November the 26th,
What year?
1911.
Who was your father?
Victor Klein.
And your mother?
My mother was, you mean her maiden name? Annie Herbal.
Where were your parents from?
My dad was born in Clausewitz, Russia.
What part of Russia is that?
Down along the Volga River, wherever that is. It's near, I remember, down about the central part of it. I think it is. My mother was born in Russell, Kansas.
Did your father ever talk about Russia, the old country?
Yes, he told us quite a little about what went on over there, how they were treated and all that.
What kind of work did your father do?
Well, they were down in one of them little colonies. You mean out in Russia?
Yeah.
Well, he was pretty young. He was 16 years old when he left there. And they lived in little colonies and had a few acres to farm, and they just barely existed. That was all.
Did he ever say why the Germans went to Russia from Germany?
Yes, he told us some of that, and of course I have read about it in different books, history books. That was way back there, if I'm not mistaken, under when the Russian had the Tsar, and he married a German girl, and through her, they made an agreement that they would,
Okay, now tell me how the Germans went to Russia.
and then through this German girl, they married this Russian brother. They made this agreement of some kind that some of these Germans, they would take them over there and they would help them get started, and they were supposed to help develop this land in Russia. But it didn't turn out that way. It never did turn out. I've heard different people talk about it that were born and raised there, and they never did get that what they were promised. And finally, they wanted out of there. These people were aggressive enough to where they wanted to accumulate something for their own, see, so they was just, they were looking for something better than what they had there.
What were they promised by the Russians?
As near as I can figure out, probably just a better living and help develop this land. And really nobody, I have really never had a real good answer on that myself. I don't, just what the promises were, but they never did get any of that.
What kind of house did you have in Russia?
Pardon?
What kind of house did they have in Russia?
Well, the way my dad talks, they were more or less kind of a sod house, the way I kind of remember it. And they were pretty good sized houses, and even if I remember right, the house and the barn was a little bit one building, like one building, you know. The livestock, they didn't have much livestock. They just had 2 or 3 cows, at least for the milk, and a team of horses.
How much land did your father have in Russia?
Well, that would have been my grandfather. What they done, they were each boy born into the family got, I think, 2 acres or something like that. The girls, none. They didn't get. We had a bunch of girls who just farmed just 2 acres, and that's what you make your living on, or whatever it was. It seemed like it was 2 acres. And of course, my grandparents, they just had one boy, and that was my father. And I think 2 girls by the time they left Russia. Or maybe they had 2 boys by the end. They left Russia in 1903, I think it was. And then there was one of my uncles was born at sea. And I had a little book here at one time that was made up at our church. And I wished I could have found that. I didn't. I'd sure like to read that, how the family come into the United States. Couldn't talk English or anything like that. But when they left Russia, they were just about as poor could be. And they were all that way.
Did talk about the trip coming over on the boat?
Well, not much. I think they went on into Germany, and I think they had real good luck. They had some relatives here in the United States that sent them the money for the tickets and for their expense coming over here. And way on, I remember they were quite lucky coming over here. And it didn't take them too long. I remember it was several weeks maybe, but I know of others that had a lot more. I don't know whether you have a tape of Ray Klein that he made. Maybe not. I think I know there's one out. I wish we'd get a hold of it. He was one that had hard luck coming over. He was a year getting over. They had to sneak away at night, and they were shot up and everything else. And finally get out. They went as far north as Siberia to get out. And they finally got into Russia.
Did he live around here?
He's dead now.
He's dead.
Mm-hmm. But I might be able to get this tape for you. I think the man still has it. He's a relative of mine. I really don't know him, but he lives in Tulsa. And he's working on a family tree, and he was here one time when Ray was still alive, and we went up there, and he made a tape of all of this.
What's his name, the man at Tulsa?
Mueller.
Mueller?
Mueller. I think I can find his address.
Okay.
His name and address, and he might get in contact with him.
Did the family land in New York or in Texas, in Galveston?
They landed at Galveston.
Why did they go to Galveston?
That's one thing I don't know. I don't know why they went to Galveston.
And from Galveston they come to Oklahoma?
No, they went to Kansas. To a little town of Dorrance, Kansas, right east of Russell. They had my dad had some uncles there and some relatives, and they'd been in the United States for a number of years. One of them, and they had. I'll have to go back and take that back. That they had really good luck coming over. Leaving Galveston, they didn't. It was rough going. They got on a train at Galveston and they got up into the central part of Kansas, and they had so much rain the bridges were washed out. Trains couldn't go, and just like I say, they had a baby born at sea, and my grandmother, they left her somehow or other. They got separated up here in Kansas. Bridges are out. The railroad company pushed one of these cars off on a siding someplace. My grandmother was in there. Nobody could talk to her. She couldn't talk. She had this baby, and she was in, I think, 2 days up there on that siding. And they couldn't find, and the rest of the family went on to Dorrance. And somehow this relative of my dad, his name was Klein too, but I couldn't tell you what his first name was. He was an attorney, and when he heard about it, of course, he knew what to do. So he called the railroad company, and they got on the ball and found her. And boy, they brought her over to Dorrance. I think she was stranded at Lincoln or someplace, Lincoln, Kansas, which is not too far away from there. But she was stranded. She had no food, and somebody walked by this railroad car and noticed her in there, and so he tried to talk to her, but they couldn't understand each other. But he knew that she needed food, so he goes to town and gets food for the baby and the mother both, and seemed to her that she got it. It's quite interesting. I'd like for you to read that sometime. We looked for it last night for this little book. We couldn't find it.
Do you have any other stories about Russia that your father told you? That you can
Have any what?
Any other stories about Russia?
Oh, not really. No. The only thing that it kind of built up a little bit of hatred in me toward the country. It's not nice to say, but it done that. And it just that the people weren't treated right, and it just kind of turned me against the country.
And why did the family come to Oklahoma from Kansas?
Why? Well, in the first place, they wanted out of Russia. In the second place, that's where the relatives were. They were corresponding, and my grandfather finally told them that they just wanted to get out, and if they could borrow the money and buy the tickets, that they would do something paid back by working for them or something when they got back to the United States, in which they done. And my father, in 1907, he come down here to Oklahoma. This was broomcorn country then, and but it went to Weeds right shortly after that. But I guess we had some more relatives here southwest of town, and I guess he kind of liked it here. Somewhere he got make this his home then.
Did he file, or did he buy a
No, he didn't file. He got here too late for that. But he bought land later on, about 1912. Yeah, 1912.
During World War One, was there any resentment toward the Germans around this area?
Yes, some, yeah.
Any towards you directly?
Not us, no. We lived southeast of town. And Higgins, there was Higgins, Texas, which is right across the state line. There's quite a few German people around there. And they had a little different feeling over there. It was just, they didn't have that hatred. So we started going to Higgins, and I went to Higgins. That was our home, our training town for a long time. I was 15, 16, 17 years old before I got shagged. So, but that feeling is long gone.
Yeah. Okay, do you have any questions?
Weren't you the one that told me about your mother or grandmother herding cattle
No,
with the baby? There
No.
was 2 young girls.
no, I didn't, but I'm sure there was plenty that went on.
Well, I was thinking it was you.
I've been told that the women did most of the work in Russia.
Well, that's kind of the impression I get too, yes. Now, there wasn't, my dad didn't say too much about that, but I know that the women done a lot of the work.
Well, I think we have a good interview. Can you think of anything else about Russia?
No, well, I hope if you get some good out of it.
How did you travel when they left Russia and went to Germany first? How did they travel?
The way I remember what Dad said, I suppose there were some other people in this colony, what we call colonies, see. They had some other friends there. They took them down to the Volga River. There they got on a boat. And they even rode a train someplace in Russia. But I have no real good maps of Russia that I can really make anything out of, even though I'm kind of fanatic on maps, and I have a lot of maps. And I get all these maps, and I take the National Geographic, and every so often they send a map or something, and it's very interesting to me, and I still got all of them. But I can't get too much out of Russia on their maps. I just can't read it in the first place, and the Russian words, a lot of it, and none of it really. But I kind of think I know where. I really never, but one time I think I found this name, Dreispitz. And my wife, she went to German, she studied German in school, and she could read a little bit, but she's lost all that now too. Now she was born in Russia, and but she was just 1 year old when they come to this country, so she really don't.
What's her maiden name?
Klein.
Well, what's her maiden name?
Yeah.
Oh,
K-L-E-I-N.
I see.
Instead of K-L-E-I-N.
I see.
Did her folks tell her any stories about Russia? Did she have any?
Yes, I think, I don't know that she could tell you too much. Her father was, he had been, of course, he was born in Russia too, and he went to Russian school. He was a pretty well-educated man. When he passed away, he could read and write 3 different languages. That included Russian, German, and American. And he served in the army in Russia. And he had pretty good going in the army because he could talk the Russian language, so they made him an interpreter, see. But they took some more. And that was one thing they were promised when they went into Russia, that they would never have to serve in the Russian army, but it didn't turn out that way. I can think of several old people that have died in the last few years that I know were in the Russian army, however they were promised not to be. So.
Okay. Well, thank you.
he never would open up and talk about it because it was something he wanted to forget.
Mm-hmm. Well, I can understand that. Did you know anybody by the name of Meyer that lived out in Beaver County, north of, there's that.
Now what does that mean?
Meyer.
Miller?
Meyer. Spelled M-I-E-R, I think.
Oh, Meyer.
Meyer.
No, I know some Myers out around Follett and that area.
Well, this man, he came from Russia himself.
Mm-hmm.
And he and Bryce were my husband was in the same hospital room. And he got to telling Bryce about his experiences in Russia. And he said that when they left, they walked, and their mother died and they had to just go off and leave her body because the soldiers were trying to turn them back.
Mm-hmm.
And they had enough money that they could buy the guards at the line where they was crossing.
Mm-hmm.
And the guards turned their heads and let them through. But he told Bryce that they met 3 cars where the bodies were just crossways of the black cars where the guards had killed them. That was child escape.
Where does he live?
He did live north of Derzett in Beaver County, Oklahoma. But he's dead now, but his wife is still living
Well,
there.
yes, you see, Derzett is not too far from the state line.
No.
Real close there, and a lot of the people that will say where you're from to say Derzett, but they actually live over in
Yes,
Oklahoma,
yeah.
yeah. That's true.
Do you know of anyone else around here that was born in Russia? Around Shattuck?
Now, let's see, we talked about that yesterday evening. After I talked to you, and I think my wife had mentioned Racine was, and I understand you talked to her yesterday. Okay, she was born in Russia too. And Philip Schaefer, and I think you probably talked to him. And another one, I think that he's quite a bit older, I'm Rudolph Kreiber.
Yeah, talk to him.
You talked to him, okay.
Him and talk to Carl Ruth.
Carl Ruth, yeah, okay. I can't think of anybody else now that did come from Russia. Now, my wife couldn't tell you nothing about it because she was just 1 year old.
Yeah.
All she would know is what she heard from her parents. And she has no other relatives other than one uncle, and he's dead now too, in the United States. All the rest of her family went on to South America. Mm-hmm. They had a little something wrong with their eyes when they docked in New York, and they wouldn't let them off the ship. They said they could either go to Canada or South America. So they went to South America, and my wife has heard very little from them. She knows nothing of them.
Did they settle in Argentina?
Pardon?
Was it Argentina where they settled?
Brazil, I believe.
Brazil?
Yeah. Either Argentina or Brazil. I think in Brazil. Now, I had a cousin that went down to that country in South America a couple of years ago. Spent 4 or 5 weeks down there. She has a lot of relatives down there too. And at the time, they were in an awful inflation deal there. The country was in bad shape. The economy was, and I guess it's worse now.
Mm-hmm. Do you know Leela, no, not Leela. She married Victor Shepherd.
She married a shepherd?
Married Victor Shepherd.
Oh yeah, wait a minute.
Her name isn't
Leah.
Leah, yes, Leah. Leah Ryswick.
Ryswick.
Well,
Yeah.
what was her maiden name?
Her maiden name was Liptaw.
Oh, yes. Would they have come from Russia?
Well, I'm sure they did. Her parents, I'm sure they did.
She's got a brother living here, hasn't she?
Pardon?
Doesn't she have a brother living here?
Yeah, but he's physically in bad shape,
Oh, he is.
mentally.
Who's the name that we got in Fargo?
Stricker.
Stricker. You know Mr. Stricker in Fargo?
Well, yes, I know some of the Strickers, yeah,
Did they come from Russia?
I think so, yeah.
'Cause we
Yeah,
have,
there's quite a few around Fargo that might,
I'm saying way back, why don't we stop there and see if we can,
the Strickers, you
Yeah.
know, there's some of them way back there, I wouldn't know whether they come from Russia or not, but there's a few that come over direct from Germany, you know,
yeah. Okay. An interview with Mrs. Klein, and what's your first name?
Helen,
Helen Klein in Shattuck, Oklahoma.
yeah. Do you need something heavy to put under that? There's some books laying in there.
Where were you born?
Huh?
Where were you born?
Lehigh, Kansas.
When's your birthday?
November the 25th. I was born November the 25th, 1898.
Who was your father?
Andrew File. Spelled F-I-E-L. They didn't spell it right, but that's the way he had to go by.
And who was your mother?
Emma. Emma File, I guess. Her name really was, isn't that funny? I can't think of the name, my mother's name. It'll come to you.
Where was your father from?
From Russia, from Dreispitz.